Hey everybody, this is Joe here today with a basic overview tutorial of how to set up the GeoVision AS Manager software. AS Manager is the main software utilized to set up, manage, and program GeoVision's access control solutions. And I'm going to take you through a basic walkthrough from start to finish on how to set up this software. Before I dive into today's video, if you like the content on this channel, please consider subscribing to the channel and also giving this video a thumbs up. It really helps to get the community out there aware of these videos and spread the message of GeoVision. So again, for today, I will be going over the AS Manager program and just showing you a basic start to finish. We're going to start with installing the software, where you can download it from our website, how to get control panels added in, how to add users and credentials. We'll go through the full setup. So the first thing you will want to do will be to go to our website. You can go to geovision.com.tw/US, and I have gone ahead and navigated to the access control page, and I went and clicked on the AS Manager page. I'll link in the description to where you can get to here. But AS Manager is a free program to download, and it is free for the first 4 control panels that you connect to it on every installation. GeoVision offers control panel sizes in 1-door, 2-door, 4-door, and 8-door. And again, the software is free for the first 4 control panels on every installation. It doesn't matter if it's a 1-door panel or an 8-door panel, you get 4 panel connections free. If you exceed 4 panels, then you do need to purchase a license. But the good news is that license is a one-time fee. So again, when we are on the website here, we can scroll down and hit the download tab. And there's 2 things that I would like to have you download. One of them is going to, of course, be the AS Manager software. So we'll go ahead and click and start downloading that. And another useful utility here would be the GV IP device utility. This will allow you to scan the network and then be able to find your controllers. And then you can do things like IP address them, firmware upgrades, set passwords. Those things can all be done with the IP device utility. Now, prior to going ahead and setting up everything, one of the things you do need to do within Windows is set up your network. So GeoVision Access Control panels all come set at 192.168.0.100. So to make it easy, I typically set up the network to match that. So my machine, as you can see here, is still Windows 10, but I'm going to pull up the Network and Sharing Center. And I have my Wi-Fi connectivity, and then also I have connected my PoE switch that has the access control panel on it directly into another network port on this PC. So as you can see, we have 2 networks here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the second one that has our access control panel on it, hit Properties, Internet Protocol version 4. This is just in here as a dummy placeholder, but when you open it up, you're going to see this bubble right here. It'll say Obtain IP address automatically. I want you to click on the one that says Use the following IP address, and we're going to set it to 192.168.0. I'll make it .200, and click in Subnet Mask. It'll auto-populate. And then for default gateway, let's set it to 192.168.0.1. Now, this, of course, may vary depending on your situation. These are just general guidelines. You can really make this a lot of different combinations. Again, for simplicity, because our panels are set to 192.168.0.100, I'm just going to keep that same scheme right here, but you can do whatever fits best for your application. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Hit OK on this screen, and we can close out this information. And now we can come back here and we can see that our AS Manager is downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Show in Folder, and you'll want to extract. And once you hit extract, it's going to go ahead and extract that file, and then we're going to run it and install it. Now, whenever the folder is extracted here, you'll just want to run the setup. So double click on that, and you're going to get an install wizard that will pop up on the screen. And you're just going to next through this, accept the license agreement, Now, on this screen, the only thing that you need is AS Manager. You don't really need to install AS Remote, so just hit Next there. All right, now our software has finished up, and you can just hit Finish, and your software is done. So your next step that you will want to do will be to open up the GV IP device utility. I have it already saved on my desktop, so whenever I open it up, it will automatically scan and it should find your access control panel. As I mentioned, GeoVision Access Control panels are set to 192.168.0.100 right off the bat. If you want to change it, you can, and if you have multiple control panels, you will need to do that. If you have multiple network cards on your system and you need to scan a different network card, you can hit this configure button, and then you can click the drop down and you can choose what network card you would like to scan here to find your control panel. So what you can do at first is you can click on the IP address. It may pop up asking you to go ahead and change the password for your control panel. So if it does do that, then you will be required to do that. Some of the things that we will need to do here before adding the controller to the access control software are give the controller an IP address, change the password, and also update the firmware. It's good to do these as a preliminary step before getting the software set up. So what you can do is click on Web Page, and it's going to open up. You might see something here that says your connection is not private. You'll want to hit Advanced and then Proceed. You can also open this up in Microsoft Edge. Now, once you have logged into the panel's web page, you'll first want to go to the Network Configuration tab. And you'll see right here a section that says DHCP client, and you can have it either enabled or disabled. We do recommend setting a static IP address for your control panels. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that, and I'm going to make this a IP address of 192.168.0.101. And then you'll just want to make sure that your other settings here match. So you'll want to make this 192.1. I'm sorry. You'll want to make sure that your subnet mask matches that you have set for your network. So 255.255.255.0, and then of course your default gateway, you'll want to make sure that that matches your network. So for my case, 192.168.0.1. Once you have got this information set, scroll down and hit Submit. And then it's going to take a minute, but it's going to apply that IP address to the control panel. And it's also going to reboot your control panel. So it may take a couple minutes for it to come back, and you want to just stand by. You want to make sure you do not unplug the control panel. Now, you can open up your IP device utility again, and it's good to just go ahead and start scanning to see when the control panel comes back after it has made its IP address change and it is rebooted. You might have to scan for a couple minutes. Sometimes it does take a few minutes for the reboot to occur. So our panel has now rebooted. As you can see, our IP address has updated there. And the next step that you would want to do would be to make sure that your firmware is up to date on your control panel. Now, on this AS2120, I know that the firmware is up to date. It is the latest, but I do want to take a minute to show you how to pull the latest firmware from our website and how you can upgrade it here in the either IP device utility or in the web page of the panel. So to get the latest firmware, you can just go onto our website, geovision.com.tw/US. You can scroll right down here to Access Control and navigate and find the panel, or you can go to Download. Once you're on Download, you can look over here on the left side and expand Access Control, and you're going to look for the IP controller panel/kit column, and then we have the AS2120 right here, and then it will show your firmware. So you can go ahead and download that firmware. It should be a pretty quick download. And what I like to do is go ahead and hit Show in Folder and extract it. Now, once you extract and you can see inside this folder, you're always going to see this warning PDF. This is very important if you have an older GeoVision Access Control panel that's on very old firmware, because basically what it tells you is if you are on a certain old firmware version, you cannot do a direct upgrade to the latest. You may have to do an intermediate upgrade to a middle level firmware before you upgrade to the latest. So it's always a good idea to open up this document and check out what it tells you about upgrading your firmware. If it's a new panel that you just recently purchased, most likely you're not going to have to upgrade to an intermediate firmware, but it's a good idea to just go ahead and read that so you don't brick the control panel. Now, what you can do is you could take the bin file right here and just place it on your desktop just for easy access. So I'm going to do that. I'll just drag it and put it on my desktop, and then we can close this out and we're done with downloading the firmware. Now, there are a couple ways that you can do your firmware upgrade. One would be in the IP device utility. So if you click here and hit configure, you're going to get a window that comes up where you can enter in your password in the first field, hit firmware upgrade, browse, and when you do that, it will allow you to search within Windows and find that bin file, hit open, and then if you have multiple of the same panel, you can hit this upgrade all devices, and this only will work if your panels all have the same password. So make sure that you would have set your passwords first, and then you could do your firmware upgrade here. Now, as again, I mentioned, this panel is on the latest, so I can't really demonstrate the full upgrade here, but you would just hit the upgrade button and it would go through its upgrade. It will give you a message here in the IP device utility as far as its status, and it will also reboot after it does the firmware upgrade. So that is option one for how you can do firmware upgrades. I do want to show option two, which would be in the web page of the control panel. So again, we're going to go into the control panel's web page here, log in with our ID and password. And over on the left, you'll hit the firmware update tab. And right here where it says select firmware, choose file, and you'll just navigate on your desktop and you'll find that file and hit upload. Again, you will want to make sure that you do not cut power to the panel while it's doing this. Don't close out this window. Let it go through and do the full firmware upgrade to 100%, and it will give you a message that it is completed. Now, the second step that you need to take on some control panels after you do the firmware upgrade is you need to format the SD card. So on the left side over here, you'll want to hit other configuration and you'll see a SD card tab right here. All you have to do is hit format and it will just say okay to format. You hit okay and then it will go through and format that SD card. Again, it may reboot the panel. And once it has done that, you are good to go and you are good to add that control panel into the AS Manager software. Now, a couple other very important things that you need to configure within the control panel prior to adding this panel into the AS Manager software is each GeoVision Access Control panel needs to have its own unique ID number. Out of the box, all GeoVision Access Control panels are defaulted to ID 1. So if you have, say, 4 control panels, I would recommend just IDing them in sequential order. Okay, so on this system, we're only going to have 1 control panel, so I will leave that as a number 1. But if you had a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th control panel, make sure you log into each one's web page here, and then just update that by, say, adding a 2, scroll down and hit submit, and then it will make that control panel number 2. What you'll want to do for convenience, and you'll see this later during setup in the AS Manager software, is notate down what IP address has what ID number. Again, that will come in handy a little bit later on whenever we add in the controllers to the AS Manager software. Now, there are some other configurations that you can get into over here on the left side of the control panel. For example, input configuration. If you hit this, this does allow you to program your inputs. Let's say if you wanted to change them from a normally open state to a normally closed, you can do that. You can also change what door number you want that input to be associated with. And then you can also choose what type of input that is. Is it a request to exit button? Is it a door contact, a fire sensor? So you do have the ability to program your inputs right there. Output configuration. This is where you can also go in and similarly, you can change your outputs and what door they're associated with and what type of output it is. So let's say, for example, output 1, for whatever reason, we wanted to change that and make it be associated with door 2. We could click that, and then we can choose what type of output that is. Is it an electric lock? Is it an exit card? An event alarm? You know, you can make a lot of different changes right here within the output section. In Wiegand configuration, this is where if you wire up your reader to the panel with the Wiegand connection, you can go in and you can verify that it is connected and wired up properly because you'll see a green check mark there. And also you can associate Wiegand A, B, C, and D, or whatever Wiegand letters that you have on your control panel to certain doors. And you could say, okay, I want Wiegand A to be door 1 as an entry, or maybe I want it to be the exit reader. So you can go in and you can hit your drop down here and you can program that. And then of course, just hit submit to save these settings. So Wiegand is one way that you can wire up a GeoVision reader or a third-party reader to the access control panel. And you can wire about 328 feet from the control panel out to the reader when using Wiegand. Some GeoVision control panels also support RS-485 connection. That will give you the ability to wire at a further distance, roughly about 1,100 feet. But this is where you can go in and confirm that you have your Wiegand connection set up correctly. So we have pretty much covered all of the preliminary setup that you would do for your control panels prior to setting up the software. So at this point, I'd like to just go ahead and jump into the AS Manager program and show your next steps. So I'll minimize the control panel's web page there and the IP device utility. We don't need this for the moment. I'm going to go down to my start menu and just type in ASM, and it will show you the AS Manager program. So if I go ahead and launch that, you will see that it will start to prompt you here with a message that says, can't open database. Please run ASDB Manager. This is totally normal. On every installation of the GeoVision AS Manager software, you do have to set up the database. It's very simple to do, and I'm going to walk you through it right now. So first, you just hit yes right here. And what it is going to do is ask you to create an ID and password for the database, as well as an ID and a password for the AS Manager program. So I'm just going to make something very basic here. We'll type in our information. You can go ahead and enter in an email address if you would like for notification purposes. You can hit OK. It'll say to activate the email service, please configure the mail server settings after logging in. So you can hit OK there as well. It will ask you to go ahead and type in that information. I like to use the auto login so you don't have to type this in every time that you open up the AS Manager program. Now, right here, it again will prompt you, can't open the database, please run the ASDB Manager. So we hit yes, and you will get a window that comes up right here. It says AS Manager Database and Path Setting. Just click this icon, and then right at the top, Setup MDB is what you can choose. You don't have to make any changes here. This will by default use Microsoft Office Access Database. If you want to use Microsoft SQL Server, you can do that. You're on your own for setting that up. But I like to just leave it defaulted on Office Access Database and hit OK. And then it's 4 yeses in a row right here. So just yes, 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 and yes. And it will say set up database connection successfully. Hit OK, hit exit, close this window. You can hit re-log in and type in your information. Auto login, hit OK, and exit. And what I like to do just for good measure is to go ahead and close out the AS Manager program and then just open it up again. And once you do that, you are now ready to get started. You can see up in the top left-hand corner, we're seeing green checks. So we are now ready to get started with programming AS Manager. So AS Manager, this is the home screen when you first log in. There's some things we're going to add here and some things we're going to take away. Really, the view here can be customized based on your application. The very first thing that I like to do is to go to Monitoring and hit New Access Monitor. This is the window where it is going to display your card swipe activity. All right, so obviously it's blank right now because I have not presented a card or a fob. But once we start swiping from cards, you will see the data show up here. Another thing that I like to select is this auto select button. What that'll do is every time someone presents a card or a fob, it will automatically highlight and select the latest card or fob that has been highlighted. Now, some other things that I like to do before getting started. This is a very good practice to get in the habit of because it's going to help you down the road if you are an installer, is to go to Tools and Options, run at startup. This makes it to where if the PC loses power and then maybe it powers back up, it will go ahead and automatically start the AS Manager program for you. And then if you do want to be able to remotely access the software through the web browser, which is called AS Web, that I'll show in a little while, you will want to make sure that you have the remote monitor server and the web server running. You don't necessarily need the GeoFinger server, so you can uncheck that. But you do want to make sure that you have these running at startup and then hit OK. And those services will now go into effect on the next start of the software. Now, within the view here, you've got some different things on the left and right side of the screen. You've got your controller column, which is in a minute going to list out the controller that we will add. You have LPR, where if you're using license plate recognition cameras, you can actually add those in and view the license plate recognition data. I/O boxes, if you are using GeoVision input-output boxes. And then also there's a camera section where if you want to add in GeoVision VMS software as a camera host, you can associate cameras with your doors and you can then see a snapshot of when someone presented their card to the reader. That's where over here on the right side of the screen comes into play, because in this black space, you can see live view. Right below it, you can see the recorded footage of the event of when someone presented their card to the reader. That's only available if you are using the GeoVision VMS software and you are recording your cameras in that VMS software. You can then do a multi-view right here where you can view up to 16 cameras in a grid, or you can bring it down to say a 2x2 layout or just a single camera layout. So there's a few different ways that you can visualize multiple doors. And then also the info tab at the bottom right. This will allow you to have a snapshot from the camera displayed right next to a pre-enrolled headshot of that card holder. So you can do a cross comparison and make sure that the correct person with the correct card is accessing that door. So this is just a quick overview of what you can see and access here in the live view screen. You can also get rid of any of these windows that you don't want just by hitting the X, and you can resize windows as you need to as well just by dragging them around. So you can really customize the view to your liking. So the first thing that we will do within the access control software will be to go to Setup and Devices. We are going to add in the access control panel. So to do that, there's a couple ways. You can either hit search or you can hit add and you can manually add in a controller. But search is going to be your easiest way to add a controller if the AS Manager software is on the same local network that the controller is on. If you do have some remote sites that have GeoVision access control panels installed and you're trying to send those control panels over the internet back to AS Manager, your best bet is going to be to use the plus sign and hit the controller add button right here, because you'll be able to manually type in that external IP address of the control panel. So for our demonstration purposes today, we're going to do the search and hit controller. And as you can see right here, it has found my control panel. Now, once I have found my control panel, or if I had multiple panels, they would all be listed out here. And this is where I mentioned earlier, it's going to come in handy if you have notated which control panel uses ID 1 and what that control panel's IP address is. versus what control panels use ID 2, 3, 4, and so on, and what their IP addresses are. Because what you will want to do will be to double click on the control panel in order of those ID numbers. Okay, so as I double click on the first one, you can see right here it defaults to ID 1. So it just makes it easier, a quicker setup, and if you do it in sequential order, again, it's just kind of easier for you. Now, you do have the ability to name your control panel if you'd like. This can be handy if, again, you are doing a multi-site deployment where maybe AS Manager is at a central headquarters and then your control panels are out in the field. You can go ahead and name that control panel. So maybe I'm going to title this Irvine Office, for example. That's where our control panel is at. And maybe I'll list that it's an AS2120 panel. So you can do that and hit OK. Now, you'll have this window that pops up here. And the first thing that you will want to do is type in the ID or username and then the password. And then you'll also want to type in the crypto key, which by default, the crypto key is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the numbers 1 through 8. Now, the next step that you'll want to do is up here in the top left, you will want to select the door or doors that you are going to have active for that control panel. So this AS2120, I am only going to have one reader on, so I'm just going to check door 1. Right here is where you can name that door if you'd like. I'm going to call it front door. And this down here is where you can do camera mapping. This is where, again, if you're using a GeoVision VMS system, you can associate that VMS and a camera from that VMS with that reader. I will show a little bit later how you can add a VMS machine, but this is where you would come in and you would add in the camera that you would want. Now, one thing that I will show before going ahead and hitting OK on this screen is the Advanced tab. Within the Advanced tab, you have the ability to change your lock reset time. So if you want that lock to be held open for longer than, say, 5 seconds, you can edit that right there and make it, say, 10 seconds before it resets. I'll keep it 5 for demo purposes. Held open time, this is for the number of seconds to where if you wanted to know if that door is held open for, say, longer than 10 seconds, it make it trigger a notification. You can edit that right there. And then another very important thing on this page is what we call authentication schedule. We see this used very frequently in scenarios where maybe you want that door to automatically unlock every day at 8 a.m. and then have it relock every day at 5 p.m. This is where you can come in and you can set up what we call release mode for that scenario. So right now, by default, all of the control panels come set up with what we call card mode, and that is set up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What that means is that a person has to present a card or a fob to gain access to that door. But again, let's say in our scenario here where we have deemed this as our front door, it's a public-facing door that customers will be coming through. Maybe we want that door to unlock every day at 8 a.m. and then relock every day at 5 p.m. And then on the hours that are outside 8 to 5, we want an employee to still be able to access that door, but we want them to have to present a card or a fob in a door lock state. So what we would do is up here on the top, we would click release mode, the blue icon. And then on the timeline, you're just going to click, drag, and highlight the time frame that you want that release mode to be programmed for. Once you release it, you can see now we have 2 colors, the card mode and then also the release mode. Now, if you want to apply this to multiple days, you can right-click and then do a copy-paste. So let's say, for example, we want this schedule to be set up for Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, the facility is closed, so we're going to just leave it set up for card mode. You can do that. Also, keep in mind, we do have the ability to program things to happen on holidays, and you can deem special days. I'll get into that a little bit later, but you can set up what could happen on the holiday or special day in the same way that you just did. Release by card mode right here under release mode. This is very useful as well. This is an add-on feature for release mode. And basically what that's saying is let's say, for example, 8 a.m. rolled around and no employee had shown up to the facility yet and presented their card to that reader. You don't want your facility's doors just unlocked and open to the public at any time from 8 a.m. on. You want to make sure that you have a safeguard to where an employee has to have presented their card or fob to that reader prior to that door just unlocking on its own. So release by card mode, we'll go ahead and set that for you. If no employee has shown up at 8 a.m. and they don't get there till maybe 8:20, that door will remain locked until the first employee shows up and presents their card. And then that schedule will go into effect moving forward until its normal 5 o'clock period where it will then lock again. So there's some other ones that you can see on here as well. Card and pin mode. If you wanted to set it up to where a card and pin would be presented, you could do that. Or card or common mode. This gives you the ability to make it to where basically either a card or a common passcode, common pin code that is shared by multiple users can be entered. You can use these and create schedules based on them as well. So we're now going to just go ahead and hit OK. And we have pretty much the basic programming done here. So I'm going to hit OK on this screen. And then for the moment, I'm going to just go ahead and close this out just so I can demonstrate right here on the top left. So you can now see that our control panel is connected and we have a green check mark. That's exactly what we're looking for. That means that the control panel is connected, all of our credentials are correct, and we are all good here. Okay, so the next thing I want to point out, I see this as a common error, this battery icon. Pretty much all GeoVision Access Control panels have a coin cell battery on the panel itself, and there is a plastic pull tab behind that battery. You do need to pull that plastic pull tab to activate that battery, and once you do that, this flashing red battery symbol will go away. Now, if you start to see that flashing red battery symbol come back, that means that that battery is low, and you do need to then go ahead and replace that battery. But I just wanted to first demonstrate that we are all set up here and the control panel is ready to use and ready to program. So the next step we're going to do is go into Setup and Devices. And we're going to now set up some schedules for these doors, and we're going to start adding in users. So it's basically 3 to 4 steps in a row that you will complete right here. The first one is time zones. So what you're going to do here is you're going to think about what times during the days you want a schedule to then be assigned to a user later. Okay, so let's say, for example, we have a group of employees where we only want them to have access from 8 a.m. to 5 to a door. Outside of those parameters, we don't want them to have access to the door when they present their card. So first, you're going to go ahead and hit the plus sign right here on time zones, and you're going to name this time zone. I'm going to call it employees and hit OK. And you now see it's created a new field for us. So I'm going to, again, just make this a 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. time zone. I highlight it, and that's all you have to do there. Let's say that, for example, you want to create another one, and we're going to call it cleaning crew. Maybe these people have even more limited time that they can access the facility. Maybe they only get 11 a.m., or I'll just do it 10:55 to 1300. Maybe those are their hours that they can do their work at the facility. You now hit OK once you've created all the time zones that you want to create. And the next step is you're going to create weekly schedules that you will apply those time zones to. Here in a moment, we are going to take these weekly schedules and we are going to apply them to what we call access groups. Think of that as groups of people that will then share the same schedule for doors and same schedule for what we just created there when they can access those doors. So right here on weekly schedules, hit the plus sign. I like to name it the same thing that I named it for the time zones. So let's say, for example, we make the first one employees. So we do that and hit OK. We're going to now choose what days of the week we want that employee's schedule to be active for. So let's say, for example, for our employees, they only get Monday through Friday access. And then on Saturday and Sundays, as well as holidays, those doors are going to deny them access. Okay, so we're going to do that for our employees schedule. And let's create another one here again and call it cleaning crew. We'll hit OK, and maybe the cleaning crew only comes in on Saturdays for that short period of time that we gave them access to. All other days of the week, they get denied access. You can create as many weekly schedules, as many time zones as you want, and you can completely customize these. So we're now going to go ahead and hit OK. And the last step, it's optional, but I do highly recommend it. It's called access groups. This is useful if you have a group of people that are going to access the same set of doors and have the same schedule for those set of doors. Let's say, for example, your employees are only going to get access to doors 1, 2, and 3, and not doors 4, 5, and 6. That's where it's going to be very handy to create access groups. Before I do this, I'm going to go in and create a dummy door on our access control panel so I can give you the illustration of having multiple doors here. I'm just going to create door 2 and 3. I'm going to call this first one side door. And then this one, I'm going to call it back door. So I'll come back into our devices and I will now go into access groups. And I'm going to create an access group. Again, we're going to keep the same naming scheme that we've been doing the whole time. So for the first one, let's call it employees. And right here, you can see our 3 doors that we have. By default, it's going to say 24-hour restricted for all of those. So now we're going to click the drop down, and let's say they only get access to the front door and the side door, and they get no access at all to the back door. You'll just click your drop down there and select the weekly schedule that you just made on the previous screen right here and apply it to that door. Let's create one for the cleaning crew. Let's say, for example, we only want that cleaning crew to be able to use their schedule and access the back door and not the other doors. Maybe the other doors, they have a way to get into a different part of the facility that you don't want them to, and just the back door is where you want them to go in and do a cleaning of a certain room, for example. This is just one example of how you can limit where someone has access based on the access groups. So you hit OK or hit the X and it'll just go ahead and save whatever work you have done there. There's no OK button on this screen. So just hit X and it will save that information. The last option is holidays. Now, this is optional. You probably do want to set this up, and it does need to be done every year. So what you'll want to do is come in here, and for your holidays, you'll want to just go ahead and click on what you designate as holidays. Okay, so maybe Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, for example, July 4th, that's not July 4th there, you can go ahead and set those up. And just, you're going to have to do this every year because holidays are going to fall on different days of the year every year, of course. So once you get your holiday set, hit OK. And again, you will need to make sure that under your time zones, and again, you are going to want to make sure that on your weekly schedules, you chose what schedule you want to apply for that holiday. So maybe for employees, you do want to still give them their employee schedule, but for cleaning crews, maybe you don't want them in there on a holiday. Okay, so again, this is going to just vary based on your situation, but make sure you come back to your weekly schedules and you edit what happens on the holiday if you chose a holiday on the holiday option here. So we have now created a couple schedules and our access groups. I would next like to show a few different ways of how you can add in users to the access control software, and you can start assigning users to these schedules. So there are a couple different methods. Our first method would be to just present a card to a reader. When you do that, you're going to see right here in the access monitor, it will say access denied, invalid card. This will happen every time you present a new card. So one way that you can assign this to a user is you can right click and you can hit new/edit card. When this window appears, the first thing you'll want to do is right here where you have the little person symbol, click on it, and you have two options, assign a user or assign a new user. If you have not manually added in any users into the software yet, you will need to select Add a New User. If you have added in users, which I will show you how to do in a moment, you could click on Assign a User. You'll have a list of all those users right here, and then you could double click on a user to assign it to this card. For this demonstration, I'm going to hit Assign a New User. Now, we can go ahead and just type in our information here. You can get as detailed with this as you would like. None of this really is required other than your first and last name. You can click and change your display name if you want first and last. If you want to list the employee ID number of that person, if you want to go in and put in their phone number, their email address, there's a lot of different fields that you can fill out here if you would like. Now, you can also go in and select a photo of that person. So this gives you the ability to have, say, a headshot that you upload into the software, and it would display that headshot right next to a snapshot of your cameras if you do integrate the GeoVision camera system. Alternatively, if you have a webcam, you do have the ability to click the webcam capture button right here. And once you do that, it turns on your webcam. You can then hit the capture button, and it will take a snapshot for you. All right, now we go ahead and hit OK. It will say if the user does not have a card/vehicle, it will be assigned to the default device group. So this is okay. If you want, you can hit OK on this, or you can hit Don't Show Again. What this is referring to with device groups is you do have the ability to group your controllers and segment different parts of a facility. We're not going to go into that on this particular demonstration, but you do have the ability to segment out your controllers into different states, which can be covered on a later video. But I'm going to hit Don't Show Again. And now we're back on the window that you see right here. Now, you can use the activation and deactivation tabs if you want. This is totally optional. If you don't click activation date, your card is going to start working after we do these next steps. But it is there if you have a temporary employee scenario. Let's say, for example, we want this user to only have 1 week worth of access, or 1 month, or whatever. You can go in and you can designate when they start and when they stop. And that card will automatically activate and deactivate on those dates. So totally optional, but you do have the ability to program that there. I do want to talk about this option right here as well. This is called Disable Lock Card, Disable APB, Anti-Passback, Allow Access During Lockdown Mode. This is typically used for high-level managers at a facility. What this does is if you ever put the access control system in a lockdown mode, this allows you to designate whose cards can get through a locked down door. If you do not check this box right here, then the card that you're assigning to that user will not be able to get through that door in a lockdown mode. If the door is in a force lock mode, they can still get through, but if they're in lockdown mode, then their card cannot get through. Okay, so if you want them to have the ability to get through a lockdown scenario, make sure you check that button right there. Down here, access groups. This is where I talked about earlier how we created access groups. And as you can see right now, it's on default. And look over on the right, and all of our doors are showing 24-hour restricted right now. So we can click right here where it says default. You get a drop down, and you can see the 2 access groups that we created, employees and cleaning crew. If I click on employees, you can see there it updates those 2 doors that I assigned the employees' weekly schedule to. My back door still remains 24-hour restricted, just like we programmed in the employee access group access group window. If we click cleaning crew, it just gives you the backdoor access for the cleaning crew. Again, this is what we created earlier in the video. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and select employees, and I'm going to now hit OK. This card is now active. As you can see, I can now present my card. I get an access granted, and it fired the relay on the control panel to trigger that door to unlock. You can see right here, it shows my username as well, gives me my card swipe information, such as my card number, my date and time, which direction, and which door name is displayed right there. Now, again, I can resize these windows. If I want to drag this over, I can do that. Down here is where my pre-enrolled headshot shows up. And then over on the right in this white space is where if we had a camera integration, you would see the snapshot from the camera that is positioned near that door. So again, it gives you the ability to do a cross comparison between your pre-enrolled photo and your photo from your camera. Great image of me right there. If I slide that back down, again, I could see my multi-view cameras if I would like, and then you can see a single view of live video up in the top right. So that is one way that you can add in a user and an access control card to be associated with that user. Another option is you can go up to personnel and you can go to users and you can hit the plus sign and manually add in your users one by one. This is the exact same process that we went through just a moment ago. So let's say, for example, that I want to go ahead and just add in another user just so we have a couple to display here. I can do that, hit OK, and now we have 2 users in the system. Import, this is very convenient. If you have a roster of users on maybe an Excel file or a CSV, you can go ahead and hit import from Excel, and it will give you the ability to import, navigate and find that file, and then import it into the system. All right, now once you do hit open, it gives you the ability to map where your fields from your Excel file go into our software. So for example, if you have a first and last name column, maybe an employee ID column, a position number column, or whatever, you can go ahead and map those fields to these headers that you see right here. So it'll prompt you to show how to do that. I do have a separate video that you can check out on that as well. If you ever want to delete out a user, just highlight them, hit delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Hit yes, and that user will be gone. I'm going to leave Adam Smith in here though. Export users. You can also export all your users once you get them in the system. So if you want to have a backup of those users on an Excel file or an Access file, you can do that right here. Now, once I have added in a user, let's just double click on Adam Smith here. Again, let's go ahead and look at how we add a card into that user. So when I'm on the user setup page, I can hit the plus sign. I can either hit add existing cards or add a new card. Let's hit add a new card. So right here, it gives you the ability to either manually type in that card number, or if you have a GeoVision enrollment reader, you could tap your card on that enrollment reader and it will go ahead and automatically populate that card number for you. So if you do want to go ahead and manually assign a card to a user, you can go in here on the card plus sign and hit add a new card. And you have the ability to either manually type in that card number that is printed on the card itself, or if you have a GeoVision enrollment reader, you can go ahead and tap the card or fob on the enrollment reader, and it will auto-populate those credential numbers for you right there. So let me just go ahead and type in a dummy number here. And again, once you do that, make sure that you select the access group that you want to apply to that user. So let's say we're going to give them the cleaning crew, hit OK, and again, that card will now be active. Also, you can go into the Personnel and Cards tab, and this is where you could go in and you could manually add in a single card if you would like, exact same format of what we just did. So let's say you have a box of cards that you want to add into the system. Maybe you want to go ahead and manually add in those cards. You could type them in right there, hit OK, and they would be ready for you for future assignment to a user. Or we do have the import option. This is very convenient. If you buy a box of GeoVision cards, on the cards box, there is a label with some information on it. If you get a picture of that label and send it to your GeoVision representative, we can get you an Excel file that has all of the card numbers from that box that you can then come in here and do an import of. So let's say you bought 500 GeoVision credentials. I wouldn't want to manually type all those in. So the import is going to be a much easier way for you to go ahead and get those credential numbers into the system. So import is going to be how you would do that. Now, let's talk about a little bit of the operation of the system. We've gone over how to create schedules, how to add users. I want to just talk about some different features that you have within the AS Manager program. Over here on the left side, you have all of your doors listed out, and you have your controllers there. If you had multiple controllers, you would see them all listed with the title of the controller. When you expand the controller, you'll see your doors from that controller. If you want to control the lock status of the door, you can right-click on it, and you have the ability to control the lock status right there. So let's say, for example, you want to do a force unlock of the side door. Let's say, for example, normally that door is locked all day, but there's an event going on, and you want to hold that door unlocked so anyone can just freely go through the door. You can right-click on it, and you can choose Force Unlock. Once you're done and you want to get the door locked up again for the day, go ahead and right-click it again and hit Disable Door Lock Operation, and it puts that door back in the card mode, meaning that it's locked and a card is required to be presented. If you right-click, there's also some other options here. Lockdown or Force Lock. Let's talk about the differences here. Let's say, for example, we have a door in release mode. It is scheduled to unlock every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., just like we have set up here on the front door. Well, let's say that something's going on and we want to have that door go ahead and lock and override the release mode schedule. You have the option of Force Lock or Lockdown. If we hit Force Lock, employee cards can still get through that forced lock door. If you hit Lockdown, only cards that you designated as a lockdown card can get through that door. Otherwise, cards cannot get through the door. Again, if you want to go in and disable your door lock operation and put it back in its normal operation state, you can right-click and you can do that right there. Now, you can also control your door lock status on a controller basis or a site-wide basis. So let's say, for example, that we had multiple controllers here, and something's going on this controller's doors, and you wanted to do a quick lockdown of all of those controllers' doors. You could right-click on the controller itself, hit Lockdown, and as you see, it puts all those doors in a lockdown state. Okay, or if I go ahead and disable that, right up here where it says Desktop, let's say we want to do a site-wide lockdown. We can right-click and hit Lockdown, and again, every single control panel and every door under the control panels would then go into a lockdown mode. All of these features I just discussed work for the different scenarios, such as Force Unlock or Force Lock. So you can go ahead and program all those just based on your scenario that's going on. Always remember to go in and hit Disable Door Lock Operation to put it back in its normal state. Now, let's talk about remotely accessing AS Manager. There is a free tool that allows you to do that. It is called AS Web. Let's say, for example, you are a manager and you are away from the facility and you want to be able to pull up a web browser on your laptop and access the access control software and make changes. You do have the ability to do that. However, whoever installs AS Manager needs to take a couple steps prior to you being able to do that. So what they need to do is go up to Tools, Servers, and make sure they check Remote Monitor Server and Web Server. So when you hit Remote Monitor Server, it shows here the default port that you would need to forward if you are going to access outside of the network is 9987. If you want to edit that port, just type in the port that you want to change it to. Hit OK, and now you can see down here in the bottom right, that service is running. Go back up to Tools, hit Servers and Web Server. The default is 80 and 443 for HTTP. If you want to edit those, you can do that right here. Okay, I'm going to leave it as default and hit OK. And now you can see in the bottom right, we have our globe icon indicating that our web server is running. Now, you have the ability, if you do port forwarding, to be able to remotely access the access control system through a web browser, and that would be by utilizing the external IP address of the PC that this AS Manager program is running on. I'm just going to demonstrate how to access it on an internal network. You can right-click on Desktop, and right here it's just showing the loopback IP address 127.0.0.1. Or if you know the static IP address for this PC, you could just type that in on another PC that's on the same network as the AS Manager PC and /AS Web, and it will allow you to then pull up the web browser and you can access your AS Manager right here through what we call AS Web. This is a completely free tool, and again, it gives someone the flexibility of not having to be on site or at that actual PC to make changes to the AS Manager software. Now, I have a separate video that completely goes over AS Web and all the features and functionality to it. I'll link to it in the description of this video. But as you can see here, there are several different icons such as user list, card list, your access log, your monitor tab where you can control your door lock status. Pretty much everything that you can do in AS Manager can be controlled right here within AS Web. And again, I'll link to that video that gives an overview of AS Web. This has been a basic overview tutorial of the AS Manager software and a start to finish setup. For further information on our product line, please check us out at www.geovision.com.tw/US. Thanks a lot for watching.